let's see what other slides I have. Oh, and then years later, I worked at Gray Direct, which was probably about as low as you can go on the creative scale. After college, I didn't have a portfolio, so I was an account guy for 2 years. I had 5 Brooks Brothers suits that I later gave to charity. I hated being an account guy. And then I put together a portfolio at night and worked doing credit card, rate offers for Chase, which is, like I said, I mean, I couldn't even tell that to my relatives. That's what I was doing during the day. But what I did was I helped some other kids get into the Martin Agency workshop, and I eventually wrote the chairman a letter saying, hey, I've helped people get in, and this is a letter that they'd read just on persistence whenever somebody started at the workshop. So, I thought that was pretty cool. Here's a Chicago story. I'd gone out to an advertising conference here my senior year at college, and my mom was coming out on business with Pfizer, and she said, why don't you come out, it's the spring of your senior year, you can skip a week, you can look for jobs. So this is my famous blue power suit, early 90s, so, the gecko look was still quite in from Wall Street. But basically, I could not for the life of me get into Leo Burnett. Like everybody else called me back, and I remember that there was this one guy, I won't name names because that'll really screw me, but he was one of the heads of Leo Burnett. I'd seen him speak at a conference. I really wanted to get my resume in front of him and, get a job. Who didn't? So what I did was, my mom was at meetings, I put on my suit, and this was pre-9/11, so security was a little more lax in big office buildings. And what I did was, all right, this is the picture I took before I walked into Leo Burnett. And what I did was, I just walked in like I owned the place. I said, hey, I'm here to see, such and such, and they sent me right up to the floor. And I get up there, and at the time they had the big bowls with the red apples. Do they still do? Who knows? All right, budget cuts, things were tough. All right. So what I did was I said, I'm Dave Holloway. It's probably like 10 o'clock, and I said, I'm here to see such and such at 10:30. And they said, okay, have a seat. We'll call them a little closer to 10:30. And I was like shitting bricks because I'm like, I don't have an appointment, but I did have my blue power suit, so I was ready. So they finally called. They called his assistant, and she said, well, I don't have anything on his schedule. I see him at 10. I said I didn't have an appointment. I just told them that I would. So he came out at 10:30. They're like, with McDonald's, are you sure you? I said, oh, I see him at 10. And like 15, he ducked out of the meeting. He's like, you don't have an appointment? No, but it's like, all right, give me your resume. So he took the resume, he cursed me, he walked back into the meeting. That night at the hotel, a woman, let's Holloway, good at work, come in and see us this week. So I actually got a job on Burnett out of that. And decided to work in New York. But, hey, but, that's just, that was probably, one of the more ballsy things I did, but you got to try these things. So, nobody fails because they're too prepared. So if I screw up the speech because I'm underprepared, but we're doing okay, right? All right, any questions so far? All right, cool, all right. Nobody fails because they're too prepared, and I'll show you just how anal retentive I am. All right, so this was, I think when I was going back to New York after my stint post-Creative Circus, these were just all the agencies that, I was contacting. It was not that it was everyone. I did little, these were hot, these were follow-ups, were, how do you call them? I get in the door. I'd already sent Sach on the recruiters, and then there's some more marginal notes. I mean, folios, agency. It wasn't Chicago, January cold in New York. It was dropping them off, and it was to see what there are a couple more of these for jobs with a partner and research. And the tough thing about Amsterdam is they have their own language in addition to English, which makes it a little tougher finding out where you're going. Damn the Dutch. And here's one thing we did after we interviewed at all the Dutch agencies. We had sort of like goth t-shirts made up. So my buddy Enrique and myself, so that's the front of the t-shirt, and then we had these printed up as we're leaving. It's our World Tour 2000. And we highlighted the folks we saw. FCB 180 had just started. Kessel's Kramer, Watt, TBWA was pwned on us, so they got that evil stamp. Look at that, second interview at Watt, we were hot. So did that, and here's another stint when I was looking in London, and this was probably the worst time ever. I actually got an offer from these guys, TBWA in London, and this was right before we went into, let's see, gosh, Iraq in 2003. So all of a sudden, the job offer went away. There were two offers. One was at Euro and one was TBWA, and then all of a sudden, they were rescinded because of, American war interests abroad. But, this was just sort of, notes on the people who I wanted to talk with, and this really looks like stalking, but this was, I'd subscribed to Campaign magazine, which was sort of like the British creativity, and that was like $400 a year at the time. But what I do is I had files for each agency, so I was pretty articulate about what they were doing when I went in. And I think Ryan, right? We were talking about, sort of cover letters earlier tonight. So this email got me in everywhere, and it was really simple. But basically, I personalized it ever so slightly to different agencies. So this was, I think, DDB in London. And I wrote to a creative team who I admired. I said, Steve Martin, my name's Dave Holloway. I'm a senior copywriter at Bozell in New York, and I admire the work you've done for John West, which is, I think, canned food, McDonald's, and Heinz. I'll be in London from these dates, and I'd like to show you my work, which includes Con Gold, One Show Silver, in hopes of joining you and learning from you. That's important. Always butter them up. Learning from you, sensei. And I hope to speak with you soon. And I actually sprung for a UK mobile phone while I was over there, just so they could get me easier. And obviously they wrote back and said Thursday morning, and basically I met with, I think, something like 17 out of the 20 British agencies I wanted to get into, and I actually met with the top headhunter, and she's like, well, how can I help you? And she said, where are you having trouble getting in? I said, well, actually nowhere. And she said, like, why do you need me? I can't get these people to return my calls. I was like, that was really good to hear. And it was just that email that I wrote about 2 weeks before I went over to London. And I knew what everybody was working on. I buttered them up appropriately. And if I wasn't hearing back, I'm off in your great country from, colonial, like it's now, and everyone just will know, different city, that it is a limited time proposition for you. They will respond, with a little bit more urgency that way. On your job search is as fun as you make it. That could apply for a couple things, but yeah, when I broke into Leo Burnett, obviously, I felt like I was kind of like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible a little bit. How do we get to the 29th floor? We lie. All right. And here's like a real passive-aggressive email I got from a dude. So he didn't get it, probably never will. I think I cropped his name off. Yeah, artfully. You'll only know him as Chris. But I'll read it down here. See, hey, don't know if you remember me or not. That's the first mistake, Chris. I was in touch with you a few years ago while I was at the circus. Okay, so he hasn't been in touch with me for a few. And then, all right, and he's killing me because everything's lowercase. He's like taking points off. It's like, I don't know, but he did it last in St. Louis, but for almost a year. Wanted to touch base with you and see if you place within me. That's another huge strike. Okay, yeah, of course I have business. That's only because I read with you. That means you. I know that this is a search, but they're seeking place. What sort of befuddled me? I thought I would reach aggressively. Talk soon. Or do you think you'll talk? I was just like, why? I mean, he wasn't other than like kind of sort of helping a job. He didn't even mention what accounts I was working on. It was all about, idle. Like, would you let him go on? We fucking ravage him. Okay, so. All right. This is from my old boss, who's now head of Energy BBDO, Dan Pietzum, who's back here in Chicago. Running that agency. He said, every agency, and he's been at a bunch, of great ones. Every agency has its good and its bad, even the best. Even the best agencies, have people walk out. My old partner Enrique, the one who I went to Amsterdam with, he resigned to Goodby and just stormed out of there. And Rich Silverstein was like, you can't just, resign to me and storm out of here. He's like, but I am, and I cleaned out my office, and that was that. He was gone. So, even these people, we think, are legends, and, these legendary agencies, they lose people all the time. So there's good and bad everywhere.